Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Class of Racing. We have spoken about how good trainers are, how good the jockeys are, and the important draw as well. What a horse should look like when it goes down to the post and how does it parade in the parade ring. But there's more to that than meets the eye. It's got a lot to do with the equipment the horse will be wearing on the day, from blinkers, alamites. How will the horse go out on the day? The jockey silks behind us, that doesn't make the horse run faster, but I do tell you, the equipment around me does play an important part. We chatted to Candice Robinson from the Bass Stable in the Western Cape, and this is what she has to say.
The most common bits used in racing, I think, is the snaffle bit. Also, it's just got the loose rings on the side, and it's just got a jointed join in the middle with what they call a nutcracker action in the middle. It's a fairly soft bit and probably the most commonly used bit in racing. A bit that I like quite a lot is an elliptical snaffle. Also got the loose rings on the side. It's pretty much very similar to the snaffle bit, but it has got a little piece in the middle that attaches to either side bit of the snaffle, which has a little bit of play in the middle, so it's not a nutcracker action as the snaffle bit, which I'll show you sticks up to the top. This has got this little bit of play in the middle. So this is a very nice bit we find for horses that are just a little bit more sensitive in their mouths. Another one is the rotary snaffle, pretty much a similar sort of bit, but it's got a piece in the middle with two little balls, and each side operates independently from the other, so the bit can basically turn on either side. The other bit that we tend to use a fair amount for horses that are a little bit keen or tend to pull a little bit is a bit that's got a whole lot of chain links to it. Waterford snaffle bit, also single ring bit, and it's basically got they're not really rings, but it's got a whole lot of joins right the way through, so it doesn't only have the one join in the middle. Each piece is a separate little piece, and horses that are a little bit strong, that is a nice bit to use. And then there's a rubber snaffle, which I don't think there are many people that really do race in a rubber snaffle, but sometimes for babies that come in that have got very, very sensitive mouths, a rubber snaffle is obviously a very soft bit. It's got no metal on the inside, it's just rubber, and there's not a lot of play in this bit. This is a straight bar snaffle, which is perhaps not as nice as a jointed snaffle, but for horses with very soft mouths or horses that have got cuts in their mouth or something, that sort of bit works. A ring bit, it's basically a smaller snaffle bit with the small rings on it, and then it has this round piece that basically goes through the horse's mouth and it comes underneath the jawbone. And this stops you being able to pull a bit through the horse's mouth. The correct way of fitting a bit in a horse's mouth, because some people can have you can have the bit too low or you can have the bit too high in a horse's mouth. You should basically, a good guide is that you have on their lip piece here 2 little creases, and that tells you whether you pretty much have it at the right height in the horse's mouth.
We've just seen the important part of the bit in horse racing. Now let's move on to the bridle.
This is the bra band. It basically goes over the top of the horse's forehead, and it just obviously helps to keep the bridle on. Otherwise you've just got, often the pieces can slip over the ears and things like that. The bra band helps to keep it on. This is the Cavison noseband. There are also lots of different variations of nosebands. There's a Cavison noseband, there's a flash noseband, which I will show you after this, which has a little loop on it with a piece that goes around the horse's mouth. For horses that open their mouths or are a little bit strong, that often helps just to keep their mouths closed. This is a sheepskin noseband, which some trainers tend to use on horses. It goes, I won't attach, I'll just show you. It fits around the Cavison noseband, like that. So it will basically sit on the horse's bridge of their nose, and they use this for horses that are perhaps a little bit heady or like to put their head up quite high when they're racing, and this, because it's quite thick and fluffy, it tends to help horses to put their head down a little bit lower, just because they find that they can see a little bit better if they're looking down over the noseband instead of putting their heads up. Some people use it on the top of the bra band as well for horses that tend to rear and do things like that. Some people find it helps to stop them from doing that because they can't really see above them, so that helps. We're going to show you how to fit a bridle and what noseband I've got on here. This is the rein part that we take first. Put the reins over their head. Come boy. Rein goes over their head. and fit it onto the head. The bit goes into the mouth. This bridle's going to be a little bit big size. Good boy. Right, so I can show you now a bit easier which parts are which. So here we go, this is the bra band that sits over here. Underneath here we have a long piece of leather which is called a throat lash. And this does up on this side, which is to keep the bridle on. The correct way of making sure that the throat lash is not too loose or too tight, you should be able to put your hand in like that, and basically gives you one hand's width of length there. So if we've got the throat lash too tight, you don't want it too tight because then it interferes with the horse's breathing. And obviously if it's too big, then it hangs down here somewhere. Then the noseband. This is a cavesson noseband with a flash piece on the end. It gets done up the back of the jawbone. And obviously there are different tightnesses you can make it. But this top part of the cavesson should fit quite securely. And then the flash noseband comes around the horse's mouth like this. And that gets done up, and it basically just stops the horse from being able to open their mouth. We all race with, there's an Irish martingale. It's basically a racing martingale, and it helps to keep the reins together so that your reins don't get all, basically keeps everything together when you're riding. The tongue obviously needs to be underneath a bit. No good having a horse's tongue over the bit. There are horses that do get their tongues over the bit, and there are obviously certain kinds of bits that you can use. You get a bit lifter, you get the ring bit sometimes helps them to stop putting their tongue over the bit. And also I find that this flash, obviously I think the flash helps a lot, and we use that quite a bit for horses that get their tongues over the bit. Horses that choke up in races, most of the time get fitted with a tongue tie. We're going to be showing you how to fit a tongue tie. Mel is probably the best tongue tie fitter around here, so she's going to be showing you how to do it, and I'll just talk you through. First of all, you need to pull the horse's tongue. You need to get the tongue out the side of the mouth. Then we use a cotton crepe bandage. There are other things you can use. You need to wrap the bandage once around the tongue. It comes through the horse's mouth, and it gets put over the bit on that side, as you can see, and back through the bit on this side. And then it gets tied at the back of the horse's mouth in a double knot so that it can't come loose. It's tied to the, sort of around the bit, and it's tied down, and the horse then cannot pull his tongue back into the back of his throat. Basically hangs out like that. You need to tie it at the correct tightness. You obviously can't tie the tie tongue too tight, because then the blood flow is restricted and the horse's tongue goes purple and it becomes very uncomfortable. And it also can't be too loose, otherwise they sometimes manage to wangle their tongues out of the tongue tie. Tongue tie gets fitted when you are saddling the horse up before a race, and as soon as the horse gets back from the race and the saddle has been taken off, the tongue tie gets taken off. You can't leave a tongue tie on for too long.
I know when I get my race card to study for the race day, I immediately look to see, is there a blinker stripe on the card? Blinkers are often used on a horse in a race when you find that they're not really concentrating that well and they're looking around quite a bit. What it basically is, it's a piece of material that goes over the horse's head. It fits over their ears, come through the top here. This piece goes over their eyes, and then it has a cup on the side of the eye, which you can either have quarter cups, half cups, or full cups. This is a full cup, full-size cup, and it stops the horses from being able to look around, so they can't really see what's going on behind them, and they can't really see. Their peripheral vision is not as good as what it would be if it didn't have blinkers on. It does not make a horse run faster. You know, it really is just a fitting or piece of equipment that you put on to help a horse to focus a bit better in a race, and therefore it maybe improves the ability that they already have there, without, you know, sort of being, some horses are a little bit lazy in races and things like that, and that's what that is used for. This is an example of a half cup. It's just not, they can have a little bit of vision out the side here. It's not as full as the other one. We at Mike Bass Racing, we don't hardly ever use full cups. We actually prefer to use a half cup, and especially on a horse that's wearing blinkers for the first time.
it's just a little bit better, because sometimes they do get a little bit uptight and a little bit panicky when they can't see what's going on. They hear noises behind them and they can't really see, so that sometimes helps just a little bit. But yeah, it is a piece of equipment that's used quite a lot in races, and often horses that have had a couple of runs and they're not really, you feel that their work is probably a bit better at home, and on the track they're a little bit lazy and they're not quite traveling in the early part of the race. You put on a pair of blinkers to help them travel.
It does make horses concentrate, but it obviously not all horses appreciate blinkers, and so you've got to use them correctly. And if there's a horse that's got ability and that he's not putting it in, well then obviously the blinkers are the route to go.
Years ago, a horse had to work with blinkers and be declared, I think, with blinkers or passed with blinkers before he went racing. What's the rule now?
Well, there's no rule now. You've just got to notify the authorities that the horse is going to run in blinkers. In the old days, we had to pass them through the pens with blinkers, which I don't agree with, because you work the horse every morning, and if you want to put the blinkers on, you work him in the morning and see how he reacts to them.
A punter also takes note of what the horse will be wearing under his hooves on the day. Will he be wearing steels or alamites? Does it make a big difference? Raymond, when they race on the sand, which shoe would they be using?
And basically, they will use the aluminium, as the steel is a bit of a heavier shoe, so the trainers and farriers will stick with aluminium.
If the horses are training mostly in the steel shoes, how long before a race day do you actually put the allies on?
Average about 3 to 4 days before time, just in case the horse gets pricked or the shoe ends up shifting or the horse gets bruising. So about 3-4 days is about the average time.
On race day, down at the starting stalls, we often hear the commentators say that a horse has spread a plate, he's being reshot at the start. You, as a farrier on course, do you believe it makes a difference for the horse's performance?
No, not really. No, it doesn't make a difference.
How long does it take to shoe a horse down at the start, plus minus, if he's lost a shoe?
Yeah, that also depends on the horse. Usually behind the start, horses obviously get a bit naughty on the naughty side. They could take maybe 5 to 10 minutes, it's also depending on the horse.
Raymond, punters out there, they're always looking to see if a horse has got allies on or has it got steels on. What's the main difference between an alamite and a steel?
Okay, the main difference, Neil, is that alamite is much lighter and a steel over here is much more of a heavier shoe. A steel you basically use on a horse that's a baby, and a horse that's out of work, and then obviously a horse that's racing, you use aluminium. Does
it make a big enough difference for the horse to have a winning chance compared to it would have had a place chance?
Look, there's a small chance. There's about a couple of grams difference-wise, but aluminium does make a big difference-wise.
Neil, I really don't think that it makes much difference, as long as the horse's feet are well balanced and things like that. But obviously, there was a lot of pressure put on us that we had to declare what shoes the horses were going to wear. So we sort of cut out any problems, and I race all my horses in blinkers, in alamites, simply just to satisfy people, But I really don't feel that it makes that much difference.
Neil, this is the front shoe. You'll see it's round in front. Hind shoe, much longer and narrower and sharper in front. And that's a clipped shoe. You can see it's got a clip to keep the shoe from moving, and that's an unclipped front shoe. Neil, it's like running with barter toughies and running spikes. That's the difference. The old saying, ounce off the feet, pound off the back.
Well, we've learned a lot about what we have to fit to the racehorse itself. But what about the jockey when it comes to equipment? What does he wear on the day? Minimum requirements for a jockey, whether you're an apprentice or a fully fledged jockey, are stipulated by the stipendiary stewards. With me, Aldo Domeyer, top jockey here in the Western Cape. Aldo, the equipment you use when race riding or riding work, is it all the same?
Basically, the things we use at races is basically the same we use at track, but obviously, you could get away with a few more things here at home as opposed to the essentials that you do need at races, yeah.
Let's touch on those essentials. Let's start at the top.
Yeah, obviously you're going to need a skull cap and goggles, you don't want to go without that, and also it's required.
Different types